Hello, everyone. I can see that people are joining. I'm just going to give another minute or so for more people to join. Welcome. Okay, so it's just gone 6:01, so I might start the webinar today. So hello, everyone. We're excited to welcome you to the very first webinar from the Cosmic Teaching and Education Committee. So today we are going to be providing an introduction to Cosmic. I am Associate Professor Louise Newton, and I am one of the coordinators of the Cosmic Teaching and Education Committee. The Cosmic Teaching and Education Committee is a collaborative community of emerging global leaders in dementia research. And our aim is to really foster the growth of the next generation of scholars focused on dementia epidemiology. So I understand that we are joined by people all over the world today. And as we are hosting this webinar in Australia, I would like to start with an acknowledgement of country. So we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. So I join today from the unceded lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to the elders both past and present. So just a little bit of housekeeping to start with. You are in listen-only mode, which means that we can't see or hear you. You can only see and hear us. We will have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So please add any questions that you might have for the speakers to the Q&A box available at the bottom of your screens. This webinar is being recorded and the recording will be circulated to you afterwards. The webinar will also be available through the Cosmic Teaching and Education Committee YouTube channel. So today you're going to learn about Cosmic. So that is the Cohort Studies of Memory in an International Consortium. So you can see a link to the Cosmic website there, as well as a QR code, which will take you to the Cosmic website. So to tell you all about Cosmic, its aims, the included data sets, and some of the really exciting work that has been coming out of the consortium, we have two speakers today. So both of our speakers are from the Centre for Healthy Brain Ageing at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia. Our first speaker is Professor Paminda Sachdev, who is the Director of Cosmic. And then our second speaker is Associate Professor Susanna Roa, who is a Cosmic investigator. So I'm now going to hand over to Professor Sachdev.
Thank you very much, Louise, for this kind introduction. And I'd like to welcome the Cosmic family to this first webinar. I'm excited to be with you today and share with you some thoughts about the development of Cosmic and how we see it grow into the future. So I'll start sharing my slides. So essentially what we're trying to do is to develop a global epidemiology of cognitive aging and dementia. I will certainly like to acknowledge the support we have received from the National Institute of Health, 2 grants starting in 2017, and also from the NHMRC in Australia. Now, all of you are familiar with the rapid growth in the prevalence of dementia around the world. I don't need to repeat some of these figures, but what I want to point out here is that this growth is quite uneven across the world. As you can see from this map, it projects the growth from, say, now from the 20s to the middle of the century. You can see the countries in dark red are the ones that are going to have the fastest growth in prevalence of dementia. And the blue ones are the ones which are slowest growth. All of them are growing in terms of overall numbers of people with dementia, but this growth is quite uneven. And in fact, the greatest growth is occurring in low and middle income countries. And this growth is because of a number of reasons. And we identify, of course, that the overall population of many of these countries is growing. That's not true for every country, because there are many high-income countries now that are not growing in their population, especially if you don't count the immigration into these countries. But many of the African countries, for example, are growing in population. Change in this is in dark green on this figure. And you can see the dark green is quite large in the African countries. But there's also an aging of the population within the country, that even if the country is not growing in terms of overall number of people, and that's in the light green. And see, many countries are aging quite rapidly. Then, of course, there is this change, which is much smaller, and that is because of change in the risk factors for dementia. And that is in yellow. And you will notice that, unfortunately, even that is leading to an increase rather than a decrease. Only in a small number of countries in the high-income Asia-Pacific is the growth in risk factors in the right direction. In more other places, it's still in the wrong direction. It's something that we can work on. And finally, in blue is the change in education. Unfortunately, that is a positive, that most countries, education is improving, and with that, there is a reduction. So there are many factors that are actually determining why dementia is growing differentially across the world. Now, one of the things that we also see in terms of inequity in dementia is the research in dementia. Firstly, inequity in terms of other diseases. We still lag behind a lot of other diseases. We are perhaps on par with depression and stroke, but way behind cancer and cardiovascular disease, which is where we want to be in terms of the funding. We also lag behind in terms of the national and subnational plans for research. Very few countries, in fact, relatively few countries have dementia research plans. And also inequity in terms of LMICs, again, the low and middle income countries, that very small proportion of the research on dementia is being done in LMICs. It is growing, but not rapidly enough. So there are several gaps in our knowledge of epidemiology. If you look at across the world, there is lack of quality data, even in high-income countries. In fact, high-quality dementia data in terms of epidemiology are often lacking. There is insufficient diversity in terms of ethno-racial, sex differences, and many other factors. There are methodological issues in terms of the epidemiological studies that have been done. There are gaps in risk and protective factor data. As you can see, the Lancet Commission that was published early in 2020, and then the later publication in 2024 identified 14 risk factors. But most of the data for that also came from high-income countries. There are gaps in collection of sex-specific risk factors, and this is one area where there is now considerable effort and recent funding from the Wellcome Foundation to actually try to fill this gap. And also disease representation. Often the data we have are really about all-cause dementia, often equated wrongly with Alzheimer's disease. And then, of course, much fewer data on vascular dementia and other big dementia categories. So we need better data, and of course, perhaps we need biomarker data to be able to actually look at the subtypes of dementia. So in fact, it was some of these inequities in global research that led to this consortium. In fact, there have been some efforts in the past to try to deal with this. In fact, this was one effort, 1066 Dementia Research Group, which basically this term 1066 came from the fact, a near fact really, that even though 66% of the people with dementia lived in low and middle income countries, only 10% of the research was coming from there. And that needed to change. So a number of countries actually participated in these. But since then, there has really been no major global effort to collect data from around the world. And we launched this consortium, COSMIC consortium, in 2012. The idea was to share and harmonize data or results from international population-based cohort studies of cognitive aging to perform joint analyses and meta-analyses to try to fill the research gaps that I've already alluded to. Of course, we were being opportunistic in that we were not collecting new data, but rather harnessing data that are already being collected. That has really been perhaps the right way to approach it, because we never had enough funding to actually collect data, new data from many different sites around the world. And this was another way of achieving that. And we started with about, I think, 20 studies or so, but the consortium has grown over the last 12 years now to 60 studies from 38 countries. And as you can see, we have global representation. We still have many areas where we have no representative. We have no representation from the Middle East, for example. Africa is grossly underrepresented still, but we hope that that will change in the future. And we currently, the number of studies we have actually account for more than 200,000 participants. But we are in negotiation with many other studies, and we hope that once we achieve these, include these new studies, we might cross the 300,000 figure. Now, there are many challenges, as you can imagine, in trying to bring such diverse data sets from around the world to a joint analysis, or even for individual participant level meta-analyses. And some of these limitations I have summarized here, and also summarize some of the strategies COSMIC is using to deal with these limitations. Of course, we're dealing with retrospective data, and therefore we have to use various strategies and sensitivity analyses to deal with some of the biases. There is diversity in language and instruments, and the harmonization strategies have to deal with this diversity. Of course, harmonization is labor intensive and resource intensive, and that's why I think the initial progress was somewhat slow, but I think it has picked pace over the last few years. And now we are looking at ways in which we can increase this through the Dementias platform Australia, which I'll briefly mention later. We need timely cooperation of multiple research teams, and we've had very generous contributors from around the world, but still there are many studies that do not have the resources to provide the data that we need. There is varying level of expertise in different research teams. Some research teams are actually now disbanded and moved on to other things, and there are no custodians of data who can actually delve into the data. The other problem that we face is that the data have been acquired at different times, at different epochs, in fact. And we know that dementia rates do not remain static. Also, methodologies change over time. So that is another cohort effect we have to take into consideration. And as I said, also, there are major resource disparities. So the depth of phenotyping from different studies also varies. So we have been publishing. We have been publishing in very good journals. I've just given you a representation. I think we have close to 30 publications now from COSMIC, and all of them being in high quality journals. And we have a lot of projects currently underway. We have listed some of these projects here, nearly 25 projects in various areas. That we will share these slides with you. We don't have time to go into these in detail. Now, any researcher from anywhere in the world can apply for data, although we do suggest that they have a COSMIC collaborator. And the process for application will be discussed by Suzanne after me, so I won't go into the details of this. We are also developing several international collaborations. We did develop a collaboration with the DeVos Alzheimer's Collaborative, although that has not been so productive, but they have actually approached some of our cohorts for deeper phenotyping. Our collaboration that is becoming productive is with the Global Burden of Disease study at the IHME in the University of Washington, Seattle, where we are looking at global estimates of prevalence, incidence, as well as risk factors. We are beginning a collaboration with the Health and Retirement Studies. Some of you may be familiar with these studies. These studies were funded by the NIH largely. There are 16 studies in 44 countries. The focus here, of course, is more psychosocial and economic rather than medical, biological, although they are collecting biological data also to some extent now. And we feel that there may be synergy between the two consortia that we could combine. These data, the HRS data, are also all available on the Gateway to Global Aging and have been very well harmonized. So we think that this could be a productive collaboration. We also are collaborating with the Global Brain Health Institute, and that is particularly in relation to teaching and capacity building. They have a lot of resources based at the UCSF in US and also in Ireland. Now, the other development worth noting is that we are developing a platform to actually house all the data from COSMIC. We are able to actually have a platform for participant level data wherever it is possible for us to get that data from the study after signing various data sharing contracts. It's an online secure platform, and this has been developed in collaboration with the Dementias Platform UK in particular. But we also have a collaboration with the Alzheimer's Disease Data Initiative, which is the US-based platform. And we think that these three platforms should be able to actually have the majority of the international data related to dementia epidemiology. Of course, ADDI has broader objectives, and DPUK also has broader objective. They are vastly better resource than we are, and they have been going for a longer period than DPAU. But we are beginning to now put data from many of the studies onto DPAU. Eventually, we hope that people can access the data directly from the platform rather than the manual transfer of data that we currently are engaging in. Now, what is the future of COSMIC? We want to map the 4 modifiable risk factors of dementia, identified landscape emission, and of course, other risk factors that have not had enough data collected so far across different populations around the world. That's the objective. To develop risk models for dementia, things that is already happening. We want to develop a consortium of genetic epidemiology. There is already a work group on this to investigate diagnostic and disease, monitoring potential plasma biomarkers in different ethno-racial groups. And this is an area that is now developing gradually. We want to develop robust biomarkers of aging. This is an area that is new and we haven't invested much in it as yet, but for the future, definitely. Promote trials for new treatments in dementia in all countries. To further develop an international community of researchers with a focus on global epidemiology of pre-dementia and dementia as a capacity building exercise, and to support early career researchers. And that's really the work of the Training and Education Committee of COSMIC, and of course a platform for data sharing and analysis to serve the international community. Now, another development we are considering now, and we hope to do that in the near future, is develop work groups. We have been suggesting work groups, but there hasn't been formal launch of work groups in the past. We have developed the epigenetics and genetics work group. There is a neuroimaging work group and a social determinants dementia work group. A pollution environment work group is developing. A blood biomarkers work group is developing. There's, of course, interest in cognition, neuropsychology, epidemiology with prevalence, incidence data, risk factors. Frailty is another area we want to develop, and biomarkers of aging. And of course, we are going to invite other people to propose work groups and develop membership work groups so that work can actually expand and grow exponentially. So the take-home messages are that COSMIC aims to be the answer to the global inequity in brain health and dementia research. COSMIC requires a proactive involvement of all researchers. COSMIC wishes to create a legacy for the future. So it's actually an appeal from me to you all to, firstly, we have been meeting once a year, usually at the AIC. We don't have a formal meeting at the AIC this year in Toronto, but we'll try to organize an informal get-together. And Suzanne Rohr, who's the next speaker, is going to be the person who will be the contact person there in Toronto. We are trying to bring summaries of updates on all the studies separately in a supplement of the International Journal of Epidemiology, which should happen. We are going to invite these from all the studies in the second half of this year, so that we can get this publication in the first half of 2026. Now, my appeal to you to spread the word of COSMIC, invite especially junior researchers, PhD students, postdoctoral fellows, to make use of the data, the vastly rich data that are available, and propose new studies, new areas of investigation. And of course, if you publish anything from this, also my suggestion to always acknowledge the NIH grant so that we can continue to get funded. So I thank you very much for your attention today, and I'll now pass you on to Suzanne. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Parminder, as well as Louise. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our webinar today. So my name is Susanne Rohr, and I'm an associate professor at the Center for Healthy Brain Aging here at UNSW Sydney. Let me start by sharing my screen. All right. So I will give you a bit of an overview of the processes involved in conducting a COSMIC study, drawing a bit of my own experience of leading such a study a few years back. So in today's session, I will walk you through the practical steps involved in conducting a COSMIC study. We will cover the process from initial idea and securing data access through to harmonization, analysis, and manuscript preparation. And I will also highlight some common challenges in conducting a COSMIC study and how to approach them. And finally, I will share a few reflections on the benefits of conducting a COSMIC study and some of the key lessons that I've learned along the way, which might be helpful for others who want to embark on the journey of conducting a COSMIC study. So everything begins really with reaching out to COSMIC study coordinator, Dr. Darren Lipnicky. Basically what you can do is send an email with a short summary of your project idea and outlining your aims. Darren has overseen COSMIC projects since the start of the consortium, so he has a really good understanding of what is feasible. He will review your idea and provide some feedback, particularly in terms of whether COSMIC member studies can cover the needed data and make sure there is no overlap with existing or planned studies. And once your idea has initial approval, you will move forward to apply formally through the Dementia's Platform Australia, in short DPAU, that Professor Sachdev already mentioned. Our colleague Rory Chen manages Dementia's Platform Australia and can assist with technical questions. And everything that has to do with the Cosmic Data application can specifically be found on DPAU's dedicated data portal, which is also linked on the landing page. So once on the data portal site, you will find all sorts of helpful information that explain how the whole thing works. And you will also easily notice the button to initiate your application for data access. If you click on that, it will lead you to a site that contains an online form which you would need to complete and submit. There's also a downloadable Word document that mirrors the online form, which might be really helpful in preparing an application, and then info can be copied and pasted into the online form. So the application form entails providing basic information about you and possible co-applicants. As you can see here, all of this is quite straightforward. Then you are asked to provide a couple of details about your project, including the title, the intended timeline, and some words on its undertaking and the public interest, which means a requirement that the primary purpose of the project is to benefit the public rather than to primarily serve a private or commercial or similar interest. For example, you could describe how your project contributes to generating new knowledge relevant to global brain health research, or how it adds to addressing brain health inequities. After that, you will provide a sort of high-level indication of what types of data are requested from a set of predefined categories, such as, let's say, cognitive status, lifestyle behaviors, medical history, sociodemographics, whatever is needed for your specific project. And following that, there is a section to put your study in scientific context. Here you are asked to provide an overview, briefly touching on the background. This does not to be super broad and explain how dementia is a global public health priority. That is kind of clear in the context of COSMIC, but you can jump right into what is specifically relevant for your project and outlining your specific aims and hypotheses, scientific rationale, and your analysis plan. There are a few other aspects to cover, but we may have actually a webinar dedicated to a more comprehensive demonstration of Dementia's Platform Australia and all that it can do. And once you have completed your application, all you need to do is hit the submit button. After the proposal has been submitted, it will be briefly reviewed by the COSMIC core team, and if there are no queries that may require any clarification, the proposal is then circulated among the COSMIC steering committee, which is made up of all the principal investigators of the individual COSMIC member studies. They may provide some feedback aimed at improving the study direction or methodology, but importantly, they indicate whether their study has the kind of data that is requested and whether they are able and willing to contribute data, which will essentially lead to the approval of your data application. Once approved, a data request is sent to the contributing studies that indicated that they are able to contribute to your specific project. Each site prepares their data and shares it securely with the COSMIC team, if not deposited already with a DPAU. The project investigators then get access to a dedicated personal workspace within DPAU's secure analysis environment. So this is basically a virtual desktop infrastructure which you connect to via a secure VPN. And then in this analysis environment, you don't just access your data, you also have a range of preloaded analysis software. Think of Stata, SPSS, R or Studio, Python, etc., Microsoft Office, and other packages if needed can even be installed upon request during the application process. Again, in a future Cosmic webinar, we might offer a demonstration of that. And then this is where the real work actually begins. And one of the core aspects of a cosmic data is data harmonization from the many different formats and contexts. In case of cosmic, Professor Sachdev mentioned it already, we are working with retrospective data. So it means you're taking variables that may be conceptually similar, but structurally quite different. Think of different tests to assess cognitive functioning, for example, and transform them in a meaningful way into a common format, which eventually allows for joint analysis, but also preserves the integrity and context of the original data. There are a couple of resources available that can help you to get an idea which kind of harmonization strategies you may want to approach. For example, Darren has led a paper that provides a high-level overview of harmonization relevant to cosmic, but you could also access and download publications of previous cosmic studies and kind of like draw on their harmonization solutions. These are all available from the Cosmic website. Now, how you approach harmonization can look quite different depending on the kind of data that is relevant to your study, and of course your study aims and the type of analysis you're running. However, it typically entails 4 critical steps. The first is mapping variables, then developing harmonization rules and procedures, afterwards apply those to create a harmonized data sets and run a range of quality checks. And it's important to always document everything. So we also plan to run a dedicated webinar to take a deeper dive into data harmonization, but the aim for today is to share some insights on what may be possible based on what we did in a cosmic study that I led, which aimed at estimating the prevalence of subjective cognitive decline, or short SCD. Now, starting with variable mapping, this step involves basically reviewing and creating an overview of all available measures or items which are conceptually equivalent, even if they differ in wording or scale. So in our study, where the main outcome of interest was subjective cognitive decline, this meant examining how subjective memory or cognitive concerns were measured across the 16 cohort studies that were contributing to this project, and identify and select items that suit best, and then collate details on coding, origin, and properties. This will give you a really good initial overview. This process is then typically followed by this process is basically a so-called qualitative harmonization approach, which involves interpretation based on meaning. So deciding which items reflect the core construct of subjective cognitive decline. And this is also referred to as construct harmonization. Another approach, getting a bit more technical, is a quantitative harmonization. Here you're looking at any forms of transforming variables in a numerical way, can entail measurement models, but also statistical adjustment. For example, we applied a so-called syntactic harmonization approach. In our case, that meant we had to recode a couple of variables to align the format. Specifically, we created a binary response to indicate the presence or absence of the self-experienced decline in cognitive capacity, which made sense as many study items had a binary response already, whereas others had like more complex answering options, and we simply collapsed it. So it can sometimes be quite straightforward. And then there is statistical harmonization techniques. Think of score transformation or scale conversions. So in our case, most of the studies had the mini-mental state examination available as a key measure for cognitive impairment. But there were 2 studies that had another test, and we applied in one case a score transformation and a scale conversion to basically match the scoring with the MMSE. Standardization is another common technique often used also not necessarily in the context of harmonization. In our study, we used an adjusted set score to inform the categorization of unimpaired versus impaired cognitive performance across the different studies. And then finally, there are some more advanced techniques that come on the agenda. In our case, that was item response theory, which is essentially a harmonization techniques based on a measurement model. Now, I was really lucky to have expertise support by Dr. Alexander Papst, the methodologist at the University of Leipzig, where I was working at the same time where I was working at the time of doing this study. And Alex basically applied item response theory as a psychometric approach to estimate item difficulty and align the different SCD items across the studies. And this allowed us to derive sort of a latent SCD trait, which accounts for differences in how the questions were asked across studies. So this procedure essentially evaluates measurement equivalence. And now, depending on the kind of question a particular cosmic study seeks to answer, such a level of complexity may or may not be necessary. And the choice of harmonization approaches can quite differ depending on the variables involved. And so don't be afraid of it. I had no idea about harmonization when I started the cosmic study. It was a learning by doing process, and it's always good to draw on expertise of those who have it and engage in a collaboration. So during the harmonization or after harmonization process, it is recommended to perform a range of quality checks to determine how well your approaches have worked. So for example, we tested the inter-rater agreement for the item classification based on a qualitative approach, and we used a reliability score and a number of model fit indices to evaluate how well the harmonized items work together statistically. Again, choice of checks is informed by the harmonization approaches. And once you have managed this step, which is probably the biggest part of a cosmic study, you actually get to your analysis stage. Now, what I would like to point out here, and this may have become clear already, that cosmic studies are based on individual participant level data, which in contrast to, let's say, doing a meta-analysis, which is based on extracted and aggregated data, allows for direct validation, standardization, and cleaning of the data. It comes with greater statistical power and leads to higher precision estimates. And essentially, this approach enables more accurate comparisons. After your data analysis, you come to the manuscript preparation stage. You may have written your methods and some of the results already. Just some important points to make here. You can export the outputs from the DPAU analysis environment, not the data sets itself, for data security reason. The lead investigator typically drafts the paper and any supplementary materials, often containing details on the harmonization approaches. And when the draft is ready, and this may also see a round of checking in with the core cosmic team, but once it is ready and you feel confident about it, it is shared among the PIs of those studies who have contributed to your specific project. And each study can then nominate up to 3 authors from their team, typically including the study PIs and those who handled the data, and everyone is invited to provide feedback. So you go through an iteration phase, which ensures that your manuscript really has a good quality. It's sort of a pre-review process, but importantly, this inclusive process also ensures transparency, shared ownership, and the recognition of contributions. And this is central to how Cosmic operates. Now, When conducting a cosmic study across basically multiple and complex data sets, challenges are inevitable. So it is actually good to be aware of the most typical ones, as they are manageable with good planning and support. First of all, time is often underestimated, like the time it takes to conduct a cosmic study. The harmonization, coordination across sites, and the iterative feedback loops, all of this takes time. I certainly underestimated the time when I did a cosmic study, so it's really important to build in cushions and plan realistically. Expect delays. So second, as may have transpired from the example that I've just provided, data harmonization across diverse cohorts can be demanding. Variables are often defined differently or measures are on different scales. My advice here is to build on what others have done already, not just as part of Cosmic, but there is a whole huge literature out there on harmonization approaches. And if anything is far outside of your comfort zone, see if you can draw on the expertise of, let's say, the Cosmic team as well. Document every decision and just accept that there are limitations. Choose a pragmatic approach that is justifiable and discuss limitations. Now, the analytical complexity can also be quite challenging, especially when working with multi-level data, but also if it involves harmonization procedures based on measurement models. And if this is also something that you feel is rather outside of your comfort zone, see if you can involve statisticians or people with experience in running such procedures, maybe at your institute, maybe there's already someone among your team, or maybe also ask us and we can see if we can find some sort of support. So involving Alexander Pabst with his statistical experience was extremely helpful for me. And finally, cross-cultural validity can be really tricky. But here again, the expertise of the Cosmic team members come in who really can help in contributing to interpret results in a way that they suit the context and ensure that findings are culturally grounded. Now, finally, I think it came across that a cosmic study entails a lot of work, but I also would like to really emphasize that it comes with huge payoffs or benefits and some really valuable lessons that you can learn along the way. That was certainly true for me. It's not only just publishing another article. So you gain access to high quality international individual participant data. And working with such rich and diverse data is really a privilege. But it also taught me the importance of rigorous planning and clear documentation from the outset. Then leading a cosmic project is an opportunity to publish on a topic of global relevance, which typically results in high impact publications, as you've seen from the overview that Professor Sachdev shared. Then the project really pushed me to develop and refine my skills in complex methods, especially in data harmonization and cross-study analysis. As I've said, I had little experience and I feel like I still benefit from everything that I have learned during this study when planning and conducting studies these days a few years later. Another valuable asset to gain, especially I think for early career researchers, is international collaboration and networking, which are core to the experience. I gained a lot from engaging with researchers across setting, and I've also learned how important it is to stay flexible and patient when coordinating across diverse teams. And the visibility and credibility that come with the cosmic projects can certainly help open doors, not just for publications, but potentially also for future partnerships. What I felt was most rewarding to me is being part of a truly interdisciplinary global conversation about dementia that really helps to gain new perspective and different understandings, as things can be quite different depending on socioeconomic settings across various geopolitical regions. And finally, And I think this is one of the most affirming lessons, was that COSMIC is not just a data consortium. It is a supportive research environment where the people who are involved with it are genuinely interested in advancing brain health together. And on that note, I would really like to thank you for listening. Thank you for your interest in COSMIC. And if you're thinking about leading a COSMIC study, go for it. Share your ideas with us. Feel free to contact Darren or me with any ideas or questions you may have. Thanks again, and I'll stop sharing my screen, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Susanna and Paminda. What a fantastic introduction to COSMIC. We have had a couple of questions, which Paminda has been answering in the chat there. There is one there that has not been answered yet, and we do very much encourage you to enter any questions that you might have into that Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. You can also raise your hand, and I can unmute you if you'd rather ask a question out loud rather than type it in the box. So this question comes from Peter, and he's interested in exposures experienced in occupational settings over a working life and their impact on cognitive decline, which is something which is really interesting. But he states that he doesn't see many large-scale cohorts which take these exposures into account, which I feel is a considerable omission. I'm wondering whether we know whether many of the COSMIC studies, I mean, I know we do, are we asking any questions about occupational complexity at the moment, Paminda, with any of our studies?
There are some studies that do have that variable. So in fact, that has been looked at in terms of trying to separate out the effects of education and occupational complexity. And the conclusion was that they were making independent contributions, even though there was some overlap, really, as you can imagine. The people with higher education often have more complex jobs as well. But there is some independent contribution of each of those to dementia risk. So that is good. But I agree with Peter that we don't have life span data for most of these studies. We have a little bit in some studies. And I think the challenge, and in fact, also there are other kinds of data like the circadian rhythm question, really, that I don't think studies often collect that, because often for these specific questions, you need to have specific measures. And most studies have more generic measures rather than specific measures. But it's worth exploring because I know there have been times when, like, I know Darren's project was on dreams and nightmares. Now, who would have imagined that people would be asking about dreams and nightmares? But there are studies. And he found 3 studies that have been asking about this. So, in fact, sometimes you are surprised that there may be some studies that have the same idea. And you may be able to collect, if not tens of studies, but at least few studies, handful of studies that have the same measure, which would certainly be a significant advance over what we have currently available. So pose the question to the group and see what the response is, really. And the other thing I would say is that there are ongoing studies as well, and you could possibly persuade them to add a certain measure if it's within their budget and within their means to do it. So yeah, so always raise these kind of issues, with the group.
Thank you, Paminda. So we have another question about whether the slides will be shared with us. We will be sharing the slides as well as the recording. The recording will be made available, and we do hope that we get lots of on-demand views of the video. So please share with your networks as well. If you found this useful, it'd be wonderful if you could share the video with your networks. Okay, we've got another question there about international mentorship. There was a previous question about international mentorship as well. And so as one of the coordinators of the COSMIC Teaching and Education Committee, I'm probably best to comment on that. So when speaking with our regional subcommittee, so we have subcommittees representing all the regions of the world, and there are some issues with formally supervising international graduate students. So as one of the first steps, what we would like to do is to set up a mentoring program. So that'll be one of the things that are coming up in the next couple of months from the COSMIC Teaching and Education Committee, steps towards creating this international mentoring community. Okay, so we'll be sending out any communications about the Teaching and Education Committee's activities through our networks. So hopefully once the mentoring is set up, you'll be receiving information about that.
Yeah. I think that would be great, really. I think if people are given more information about the mentoring program, really. I think I was mentioning joint supervision. I know formal arrangements with universities are complicated, but there could be informal supervision to some extent, yeah, or at least expert input from the cosmic research community. And within the community, there are various kinds of expertise that we could tap into. So if you have a student who's struggling with something or needs a particular kind of supervision, I think certainly put that to Cosmic, and we can see if there is someone we can find who may be able to give the time as well. Yeah.
So I've entered my email address in the chat there. So if you do have questions specifically around the Cosmic Teaching and Education Committee and our activities, please send me an email. If you have any suggestions for things that you'd like to see the committee do as well, please send me an email. We're very open to suggestions.
Louise, if I may just follow up on these two questions, Peter's follow-on question and Tim's question. Firstly, in relation to Peter's follow-on question, we have a group that is looking at environmental exposures. And that is being led by Professor Esther Serene, who is in Melbourne. And there are a number of other people involved in that. In fact, she's engaging now with study with groups in China, India, and Brazil, trying to look at environmental exposures. Now, these are based on people's residences, really, not on occupation per se. Because for occupation, of course, we need individual survey data. But of course, these exposures are based on publicly available data sets of environment, of pollution and other environmental factors. But there may be some studies that do have questions on exposure to lead, solvents, etc. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think we have data on that, but certainly a question. If there is a proposal you have, you can submit that proposal, even a brief proposal, and we can find out we can survey the different studies to find out which studies do have the relevant data. Is it worthwhile to pursue that kind of project? So definitely put that to the Cosmic group. I think the other issue is in terms of the work groups. Now, work group is something I presented here. We haven't launched these formally. I mean, certainly the genetic group has been launched formally, and they are inviting other researchers to join. The epidemiology group is also working with outsiders. But I think the idea of the work group, of course, is that we want to invite researchers from across the globe, really, to be part of this and contribute their thoughts, maybe take on some analyses, propose new ideas, new projects for that. So definitely, I think this is something we'll formalize, and we will send out a call. As each group is formalized, we send out a call for participation.
So there's a question there about dietary intake data. I'm pretty sure we do have a study going on at the moment looking at that dietary intake data.
We have a lot of studies with dietary data. In fact, we have had a number of projects come through there. Actually, two researchers here in Sydney who are very interested in dietary data. One is Joy Darley, who is a nutritionist, actually has nutrition background, and has been working in this and on a number of studies individually, and then of course also now looking at cosmic data. And we have a postdoc in our group, Annabelle Mattison, who has a background in this area and has been looking at nutrition as well. So a number of papers have been published, but there is more that can be done. So definitely this is one area of interest. We get in touch with either Darren or Suzanne or maybe Annabelle and can take that forward.
The next one is an interesting one, which I'll hand to you, Paminda. From your experience, what do you think Africans can do differently to reduce the burden of dementia, aside from education? The big one.
I wouldn't say that I'm an expert, Irene. There are people who know Africa better than I do. Yeah, I think our data, our engagement with Africa is still limited to some extent. But definitely, I think we're looking at incidence data and also risk factor data to try to see how these different countries vary in terms of both incidence and risk. And I think Africans, of course, I mean, like all other people, really, I think there are strengths and weaknesses in the population. There are, because if different stages of industrialization, different stages of development. So I'm not sure whether there'll be anything quite unique, but definitely I think something that we would like to highlight in some of our further studies. There is a group around dementia in Africa, which one of our colleagues, Raj Kalaria, has been heading and has a number of people. He originally comes from Kenya, although he now lives in the UK. And he organizes yearly symposia on dementia in Africa. Maybe worth connecting with that group as well.
And finally, we do have a question about gait changes. I don't know if we have any studies that look at gait changes. Paminda?
Yeah, there are studies that have looked at gait. Well, in fact, our study in Sydney, memory and aging study, has gait data on not the whole cohort, but on a sub-cohort. In fact, very detailed gait data. And a number of papers on falls have been published. There are other studies that have limited data, like 6-meter walk, for example. A lot of studies collect that data. And sit up, sit down, sit up and stand, and sort of some other data sets looking at muscle strength, etc., are available in many studies.
So we are getting through lots of questions about sort of specific areas that people are interested in, and our advice really is to send your sort of project ideas into COSMIC. And given that we have 60 studies, you know that we may well have the data that you're looking for. I am going to wrap up there. I don't think we have any more questions in the chat there. I want to say thank you to everyone for coming along and watching today, and thank you very much, Paminda and Susanna, for presenting the webinar today.
Thank you, Louise. I think that we see this as a family, right, a cosmic family, and I think we all working together, and definitely approach us if there are any concerns or questions.
Fantastic, thank you.